Welcome to the wild side of politics.
There's a lot of energy in this room, just like there is across the country.
Shall we just forget about her? We could try, but she doesn't let us. She just gave a speech at the DNC. It's like, please, talk about me.
Kamala cares about kids and families, cares about America.
Remember 2016? This black widow stood tall, fighting for the people, for democracy, for the whole human race, or just the presidential race. Hey, they say the Oval Office is pretty nice. You get to choose between 3 desks and stuff. While also being unburdened by what has been, she made a bold move to secure her victory. Purely for our sake, of course. So she did the unthinkable. She reached out to Satan. She dialed 666 and said,
"Hello, may I speak to Satan?
This is Satan. How may I hinder you?
For you, my soul you shall have, and my victory you shall grant."
Satan, always the shrewd negotiator, responded,
Why are you talking like that? Anyway, how about I get a copy of those emails instead? Don't get me wrong, but realistically speaking, it might be easier for you to offer something that can actually be recovered.
She tried to pull a fast one on him, but we all know how that went. In her youth, the Black Widow was an energetic girl full of hopes and dreams. They say she even watched anime. How cute. Her favorite anime was Pokemon, and that's what made her dream grow, sparking her career and setting her on a journey to collect as many souls as she could.
Let me and millions of others dream bigger.
Gotta catch 'em all, right? And she sure did catch 'em. That is how she got her name. Apparently, she handles her close friends just like her emails, sending them off, but for the friends, it's off to her spam folder, aka the point of no return. It happens voluntarily, of course. Yeah, by now, I think everyone's noticed how a surprising number of people who got close to her decided to take the ultimate exit. Coincidence? Maybe. But when your list of associates who've mysteriously taken their own lives is longer than the list of Donald Duck's felony convictions, it does make you wonder.
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions.
It's almost as if her very presence drives people to make irreversible decisions. Perhaps being caught in her web was just too much for them to bear. And on those infamous emails, I read on this lovely place where people always share their hobbies, moments, and their appreciation of each other, the place that is called the internet, that Donald Duck should have constructed a wall from her emails. You just can't get over them. You know what? Let's take a closer look at the email fiasco that really defined her tenure as Secretary of State. While most government officials understand the importance of keeping official communications secure, the Black Widow decided to go rogue and set up a private email server in her basement. When questioned, she casually explained that the server was mainly for convenience, for emails about yoga routines and Chelsea's wedding plans. Because when you're negotiating peace deals and dealing with classified intel, you obviously need to keep track of your downward dog. But as it turned out, this little tech DIY became a national security nightmare, with classified information possibly ending up in the wrong hands. And what was found was truly revealing. No, not what you're thinking. Get your mind out of the gutter. No one is interested in that. Not even Bill. I'd say if she had put those revealing things on the server, it might have actually kept the hackers at bay.
It wasn't the best choice. I made a mistake. It was not prohibited. It was not in any way disallowed. And as I've said, and as now has come out, my predecessors did the same thing, and many other people in the government. But here's the cut to the chase facts. I did not send or receive any emails marked classified at the time. What you're talking about is retroactive classification. And The reason that happens is when somebody asks, or when you are asked to make information public. I asked all my emails to be made public. Then all the rest of the government gets to weigh in. And some other parts of the government, we're not exactly sure who, has concluded that some of the emails should be now retroactively classified.
But when she asked to turn over the emails, she did the digital equivalent of shredding documents, deleting tens of thousands of them. But don't worry, folks. They were just about polite as in green smoothies.
At the end, I chose not to keep my private, personal emails. Emails about planning Chelsea's wedding or my mother's funeral arrangements, condolence notes to friends, as well as yoga routines, family vacations, the other things you typically find in inboxes. No one wants their personal emails made public, and I think most people understand that and respect that privacy.
And that brings us to her little connection with flight MH370. Oh, I see that raised a few eyebrows. You might be wondering, what on earth do her emails have to do with the Malaysian flight that went missing? Well, stick around and I'll tell you. They say the plane landed on her private email server.
Don't boo.
Was that lame? Okay, let's just pretend I did not say that. All right, enough roasting. Let's talk about her actual political legacy, the years she gave up for her people and her grand vision for humanity as a whole. Let's start with the subject of foreign policy. Let's not forget the Black Widow's indirect connection to some of the most notorious groups in modern history, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
We also have a history of kind of moving in and out of Pakistan. I mean, let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia. And we went to work. And it was President Reagan, in partnership with the Congress, led by Democrats, who said, you know what, sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's deal with the ISI and the Pakistani military, and let's go recruit these mujahideen. And let's get some to come from Saudi Arabia and other places, importing their Wahhabi brand of Islam so that we can go beat the Soviet Union. And guess what? They retreated. They lost billions of dollars, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a very strong argument, which is, it wasn't a bad investment to end the Soviet Union, but let's be careful what we sow because we will harvest. So we then left Pakistan. We said, okay, fine, you deal with the stingers that we've left all over your country. You deal with the mines that are along the border. And by the way, we don't want to have anything to do with you. In fact, we're sanctioning you. So we stopped dealing with the Pakistani military and with ISI, and we now are making up for a lot of lost time. So this is an incredibly difficult set of issues that are all interconnected. But, we can point fingers at the Pakistanis, which is, I did some yesterday, frankly. And it's merited because we're wondering why they don't just get out there and deal with these people. But the problems we face now, to some extent, we have to take responsibility for having contributed to.
During the Cold War, the U.S. supported Afghan mujahideen fighters to push back against Soviet forces, with the belief that they were backing freedom fighters. Yeah, right, that is what they always say. This support, which continued into the 90s, the Black Widow herself later admitted that these groups turned into a U.S. version of Frankenstein's monster.
To be fair, we had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. The Soviets left Afghanistan, and then we said, great, goodbye, leaving these trained people who were fanatical in Afghanistan and Pakistan, leaving them well armed, creating a mess, frankly, that At the time, we didn't really recognize. We were just so happy to see the Soviet Union fall, and we thought, okay, fine, we're okay now. Everything's going to be so much better. Now you look back, the people we're fighting today, we were supporting in the fight against the Soviets.
Fast forward to the early 2000s, and who do we find supporting interventionist policies and wars that further destabilize the region? Oh, it is our very own Black Widow. Though she wasn't in the driving seat during the Mujahideen days, her support for policies that perpetuated conflict in the Middle East certainly helped keep the fire burning. It's like she's been weaving her web across decades, with the threads connecting one disaster to another. In the early 2000s, when the U.S. decided to spread a little of freedom sprinkled by the unholy democracy by invading Iraq, well, guess who was one of the loudest cheerleaders for that war? Again, it's our Black Widow.
In the 4 years since the inspectors left, intelligence reports show that Saddam Hussein has worked to rebuild his chemical and biological weapons stock, his missile delivery capability, and his nuclear program. He has also given aid, comfort, and sanctuary to terrorists, including al-Qaeda members. It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons. Should he succeed in that endeavor, he could alter the political and security landscape of the Middle East, which, as we know all too well, affects American security. This is a very difficult vote. This is probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. Any vote that might lead to war should be hard, but I cast it with conviction.
Despite the glaring lack of evidence, she backed the invasion with enthusiasm, perhaps dreaming of all the new web she could spin in a destabilized Middle East.
Were you smart about Iraq, endorsing the president's position on Iraq? Did you believe ever that Saddam Hussein, when you had to cast that vote to authorize the war in Iraq, did you ever believe that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons?
I did.
Who told you?
Well, I know at the end of the Clinton administration, there was a very strong sense.
Spider sense.
Although it has the word free in it, but freedom and democracy don't come without a price. And that price is often paid in gold. But hey, ever since they were blessed with the unholy democracy, Iraqis have been living happily, just not in Iraq. Enough sarcasm. The reality is that the war resulted in countless lives lost, a region plunged into chaos, and the rise of extremist groups that continue to haunt the world today.
Look, I know that there have been a lot of questions about Iraq posed to candidates over the last weeks. I've made it very clear that I made a mistake, plain and simple.
But for the Black Widow, it was just another step from one of her many legs that remain in every disaster till today. In 2011, Libya was another country that found itself on the receiving end of the Black Widow's expert foreign policy. Along with the Black Mamba she pushed for military intervention in 2011, it was supposed to be a quick, decisive action to remove a dictator and bring, ding ding, you guessed it, the unholy democracy to the Libyan people, which is the usual package that is marketed as the greater good, but ends up unleashing chaos, leading to civil war, the rise of extremist groups, and a country still struggling to recover. And on the subjects of extremists, why is it that wherever the U.S. goes, extremists just pop out of nowhere? Who cares, right? Let's just blame it on Islam.
Secretary Clinton, one question on foreign policy. You are described in a recent acclaimed book by Mark Landler as being the, quote, house hawk in the Clinton war cabinet. And we know that you, and you've talked about this, you encouraged the president to intervene in Libya in 2011. Recently, President Obama said his worst mistake in office was probably failing to plan for the day after what he thought was the right thing to do in intervening there. How do you see your responsibility in that?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember where we were and why the president made the decision he did, because this was a presidential decision. I've advised the president. Sometimes he follows my advice. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he uses a combination of what he hears from his advisors. We were looking at a potential disaster as Gaddafi threatened to massacre large numbers of his population.
How dare he steal our job?
The Europeans, our Arab allies, were urging us to help them to try to prevent that. After due diligence, we came up with a way of supporting their efforts that did not cost a single American life, and we saved a lot of Libyan lives.
Sounds like the Libyans are following the footsteps of the Iraqis, living happily ever after, just not in their own country.
I think we should remember where we were, the kinds of threats and actions that Gaddafi was taking. And I have to say that when I look at this, an absence of action by NATO, by Arab League members, would have probably turned Libya into Syria, which I think would have been an even more dangerous situation. So we all give our best judgment. I respect everybody who I worked with in the Obama administration, and then ultimately we make our recommendations to the president.
Some people say it's not so much that Syria, it may be been like Syria, but it isn't so good right now.
Well, no, it's not good. I'm not saying that it is, but it's sure better than Syria. I think maybe 1,500 people were killed last year compared to probably 150,000 in Syria.
She has a way of making it sound like she's talking about vegetables, not actual human beings.
The UN, supported by the United States, Europe, and others, to try to create a unity government in Libya, enabling the people of Libya to get what they voted for, John. I keep reminding people of this.
Did they vote for your invasion?
They've held 2 elections. They voted for moderates. They voted for democracy. They voted for a path forward that has been disrupted because of the interference of outside forces as well as internal squabbles. But this has only been a few years. I think we've got to really work hard to help the Libyans achieve the goals that they set out for.
But of course, when things went south, the Black Widow was already moving on to her next act, leaving Libya for the Libyan to pick up the pieces. And at the same time, from 2011 to 2016, Syria was a country that's been through more turmoil than a season finale of a political drama. The Black Widow's involvement there as Secretary of State was supposed to bring peace and stability. But what it really brought was, you guessed it, the same old package of the unholy democracy, chaos and destruction.
There will be people who say, well, it's not our fight. We don't care. What difference does it make? We're not involved. First of all, we are in an interconnected, interdependent world, unlike any we've been in history before, because of mobility, because of communications. And so what happens in other places can very much have an impact on you.
Her policies that intended to help the Syrian people ended up contributing to one of the worst humanitarian crises of our time.
People have to know that they will be held accountable as war criminals, as committing crimes against humanity if they engage in these kinds of aggressive, violent acts. It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
And then comes Benghazi, the tragedy that the Black Widow would probably prefer you forget about. Back in 2012, an American diplomatic compound in Benghazi, Libya. Yeah, the same Libya she messed up with the Black Mamba. The compound was attacked, resulting in the deaths of 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador. While the attack was unfolding, the Black Widow, as Secretary of State, was apparently too busy juggling her many responsibilities, like not checking her emails, to notice the cries for help.
discussions. And so then when our compound took a second attack on June 6th, when a bomb blew a wall through the compound then, no emails at all. But I am interested in knowing, who were you meeting with? Who were you huddling with? How were you informed about those things? Because there is nothing in the emails that talks about 2 significant attacks on our compounds in 2012. There was a lot of information in 2011 about issues and security posture, and yet nothing in 2012.
When questioned about it later, instead of showing some good old-fashioned remorse, she shrugged and asked, "What difference does it make?" A line that will likely go down in history as the coldest response to a national tragedy.
Again, we were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
Turns out, when lives are on the line, Hillary's priorities are as scattered as those emails she was supposed to turn over. Anyway, after the Benghazi tragedy, the Black Widow saw it as the perfect opportunity to, what else? Raise some funds. Because after a tragedy, what better way to honor the fallen than by padding your account, right? With her tragic face on, she showed up at a fundraiser supposedly to support the victims' families. But instead of offering real solutions or accepting any responsibility, she treated it like just another campaign stop. For those grieving families, it was a moment of deep loss. But for the Black Widow, it was just another day in her web-based political act. I feel I'm being a bit harsh on our beloved Black Widow. We love her. Let's make that clear. I may joke about her not having a soul, but she has a sweet side that's worth mentioning, a side that resonates with all of us. She also has a lot of love in her too, like her love for hot sauce. I heard she always carried a bottle in her purse during the 2016 campaign. How cute. That's what I thought until I realized hot sauce is what she calls holy water.
Don't boo.
When it comes to politics, she isn't called the Black Widow for nothing. She has a killer instinct. Just ask Gaddafi. And like the venomous spider, she's got a way of weaving webs so intricate and sticky that even she might get tangled in them. Whether it's her involvement in wars, her shifting stances on major issues, or her ability to dodge accountability, the Black Widow's hypocrisy knows no bounds. She'll tell you one thing, do another, and somehow convince you it was all for the greater good. If spiders had a union, she'd be the one making the rules, and of course breaking them whenever it suited her. With each controversy, she spins another layer into her web, drawing people in, only to leave them stuck in the mess she created. And just like a real Black Widow, once you're caught in her web, there's no easy escape.
My friends, when a barrier falls for one of us, it falls. It falls and clears the way for all of us.
And that brings us to the end of this video. These are just some of the controversies surrounding our Black Widow. The alt-left will deny. The alt-right will swear by, and the Control-Alt-Delete middle, do they even exist? Anyway, I'm not here to give a political advice. I'm just laying out the controversies with a bit of a twist. Some might be true, some are not, some exaggerated, and others are suppressed. There are plenty more. But I've focused on the ones you can actually research without diving into conspiracy rabbit holes. But what really matters from all of this is what you think. So let me know in the comments. Are they facts, fictions, or a mix of both? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more.